Hi there, and welcome again to the Employment Law Show. Good to have you with us for the half hour. Stick around, you will learn lots. That much we can almost guarantee. John Scholes here along with Lior Samfiru, employment lawyer at employmentlawyer.ca. You want to reach out to Lior? I'll give you the number off the top, right? You probably know it, 1-855-821-5900, help@employmentlawyer.ca, and a website which will come up several times during the show and for good reason called pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. There's all kinds of information to be learned about your employment law rights as it pertains to your work life, so spend some time on that free and anonymous website and rolled into that severance pay calculator. That is a great tool. Within about 30 seconds, you'll know the accurate number of how much severance you should be getting. It's anonymous, it's free, and over 2 million people in this country have checked it out. Again, it can be found at pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. The show a little later on, Lior, we're going to be talking about what you need to know about social media in the workplace. Look out. Might get some hot water there, but we're going to discuss a few of those points in just a bit, and some live, or at least not live, at least calls from our live radio shows that we've been hosting for darn near a decade across the country, so stick around for that. But week that was, a case of the day, whatever you want to call it. What do you got for me, pal?
Well, Johnny, it's always great to be here, and I want to make it very clear. You know, you may see me on TV here with Johnny, you may hear us on the radio across the country, but that time that I spend on TV, on radio, is a very small part of what I actually do. I spend most of my time in the office, talking to people, solving workplace problems, enforcing those legal rights that we all have when it comes to employment law. And I want to make sure when I do this, when I do come on TV, that you end the show, when you turn off the TV, you know more than you did when you joined us. You understand more about your rights. You understand what to do if you're ever faced with a difficult workplace situation, because it's not always going to be roses and sunshine and work. Sometimes you're going to have difficulties. Sometimes you're going to deal with ultimatums, or you're going to have a difficult boss, or maybe the company is going to do things inappropriately. They're not going to pay you as they should. You name it. But in all those situations, the law comes and says you have rights. You have options. Most people don't understand what those rights and options are. I want to change that. John and I have been working hard for the last 10 years to change that, and we've done a great job, and we're going to continue to do that. So you have an opportunity on this show to learn things you didn't know before about your rights, not someone else's rights, your rights. So that's why it's so important. And of course, if you want me to also be involved in what I do most of my time, to actually roll up my sleeves and help you, we'll give you that contact information throughout the show so you can call, email, we can have a private chat and get to work. But now that we know what we want to do on this show, let's do it. Let me tell you about a situation that came across my desk. Now, our regular viewers know that we have two aspects to our law practice at the firm. So employment law, of course, that's why I'm here. That's why this is the Employment Law Show. The other aspect is disability law. So we help individuals that have been cut off disability benefits by their insurance company, long-term, short-term disability. Now, oftentimes, John, there's an interplay between those two. So you may have an issue with one, and then it impacts the other. And I had a great example of this week. Someone that had a situation that touched on both areas. This individual had been off work for about 1 year and 3/4 or so, going on 2 years, for serious medical condition, and you know, he's been off for a while, but for some reason his insurance company decided to tell him, well, we think you should be able to come back to work soon, so we're going to cut you off. We're not, even though your doctor is saying that you should still be off work, we're going to cut you off. We don't agree with your doctor. His employer then hears that and says, well, you can come back to work. Well, we expect you to be back to work as soon as you're cut off by the insurance company. Oh, and by the way, if you don't come back, we're going to consider you to have resigned. So you're gone, no more benefits, no more anything. Think about the difficult situation this guy is in. He's still unable to work. He's still getting treatment. His doctor still says he needs to be off. Insurance companies threatening to cut him off. His employer saying they're going to consider him to have resigned. And he's done nothing wrong. So how does this break down? Well, let's be very clear. Number one, the insurance company. The insurance company should not be cutting him off if he still cannot work. If he still has a doctor supporting him saying, you need to be off work. Now, unfortunately, it's not common for the insurance company to try to push the envelope, to try to get you off their payroll so that they don't have to pay you. The good news is once we get involved, they'll back down or we can negotiate compensation. But don't just accept that. Don't accept the insurance company's decision. If your doctor says you can't work and you know you can't work, the insurance company should support you, not make your life more difficult. So right off the bat, that's what you need to know. The other thing, of course, employment. Your boss, your company can't go against what your doctor says and prefer what the insurance company says. If your doctor still says you cannot work, it doesn't matter what the insurance company is saying. In that case, they still have to allow you to be off work until your doctor clears you. They can't threaten you with a termination. They can't threaten you with a resignation. That potentially could be a human rights violation, wrongful dismissal, you name it. So I'm going to help this person on both fronts here, both dealing with the insurance company and, of course, dealing with his employer. But there's an important reminder there. Your doctor is what matters, both in dealing with your insurance company and with dealing with your employer. And any problem on both those fronts ever, you give us a call.
What happens if and when the employer starts incorrectly snooping around and saying, so what's wrong with you? Why are you still off? What's your diagnosis?
Well, you've been off for a while. We want to know more specifics. What is your condition?
Yeah,
what
exactly.
medication you're taking? What specialist you're seeing? And you may think, well, wait a second. That's kind of personal. That's private. I don't want to tell my employer what that is. Well, good news. You don't need to. Your employer does not have a right to demand to know what your diagnosis is. They don't have a right to know what the condition is, what medication you're taking, what doctors you're seeing. All they have a right to know is whether you can work or whether you cannot work or what accommodation you need. And that's it. So if your employer is trying to get too much information, personal, private information, you can say thanks, but no thanks. I'm not going to provide that. I can give you an updated doctor's note saying that I can't work, but that's where it ends. And if your employer still pushes the envelope or threatens you that you'll lose your job if you don't give that information, you call me and I'll get them off your back.
Because as we said countless times on this show, prognosis, fine. Diagnosis, no.
No, right? Exactly. Prognosis, can you work, can you not, what accommodation you need. Diagnosis, what is the condition, offside.
Again, as mentioned, you can catch our radio shows across the country. Leor and I have been doing for many years. Simply go to employmentlawyer.ca, the media tab. You'll find a station near you. You can pick it up, and you can catch them online as well. Just go to that website, as I mentioned. They call in. Callers call in all the time. They want to know stuff just like you might be wondering from watching this television program, but they have the opportunity to phone the station and talk to us live on the air. We like to play them back here and learn something from them. First phone call for today, Leor, is coming up right now.
I've been a sales rep for 20 years with this company. Essentially, they're taking 4 divisions and they're condensing it down to 1, 70 reps, shrunk down to 20. All of our roles will be eliminated and we can apply for the tools that are being created. If you don't want to apply, you could take a package. If I take the package, am I able to seek employment for the 8 weeks that they're paying me from part of my package?
8 weeks. Puts the week in weeks.
Oh, my God. Terrible. 8 weeks. But guess what? There's a lot of misconceptions out there, and people believe, well, severance maxes out at 8 weeks. Nonsense. So first of all, this person doesn't have to reapply for their position. If they're losing their job, his employer has to pay him his full severance. So, of course, the question then becomes, is 8 weeks enough? Now, listen, John, we talked on our last week's show about the fact that there's a lot of myths, and one of the big one is the fact that you get a week per year or some other formula. Wrong, false, not true. And this is a great example of that a lot of people may say, yeah, 8 weeks is all you get. Not even close. So let me show you how much he actually gets. And to do that, it's easy to tell you, but I want to actually show you. Let's go to our severance calculator. You can find that at pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Again, it's pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. Use that severance calculator tool, and let's see what we actually get. And hint, John, it's not 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So 20 years of service, you see there, let's say someone in his 50s was offered 8 weeks. Nonsense. You see that he's owed right around 18 months. So they got the 8 right. They just forgot the 1 and they forgot the months. So it's 18 months, not 8 weeks. That's a huge difference. You know, I did some math. At a salary of $74,000, that's a difference of about $100,000.
Wow.
Okay, that's a massive, massive difference. That's why you use the severance calculator. That's why you don't accept what you're offered. You don't want to find out when it's too late that you were owed an extra $100,000.
We always mention websites you can use to your benefit. Ask questions when we're not doing this, or the radio show for that matter. Terminationquestions.com is the next one we'll stop by. Terminationquestions.com, free and anonymous. You can use that anytime. First one for the show here, Leor. I was fired via email an hour before starting a shift. They gave me no prior notice, putting me in a very difficult financial situation. Do I have any recourse against my former employer? Can they let you go like that through a quick message?
Listen, John, it's not how I would ever recommend that an employer let someone go. It's disrespectful, it's not professional, and it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth when you're coming into work and then on the way there you get a text message, don't bother coming in, you're gone. Wrong way to do it. But we're talking about law, and is it illegal? No. The law does not really tell an employer that they have to let you go in a nice way or in a professional way. So yes, can you be let go with a quick text message? Yes, you can, as wrong as I think it otherwise is. It is legal. But here's what potentially can make it illegal, and that is if you're not paid or not offered proper severance. And over 90% of people, when they're let go, are not offered anywhere near what they're owed, John. So the focus for this person shouldn't necessarily be on the text message. I know why they're upset about that. I would be as well. The focus should be on, did they get proper severance? Even if you're a part-time employee, even if you work in a low-paying job, your entitlements can be very significant. We talked about a severance calculator. You can use that whatever job you have. Pocketemploymentlawyer.ca.
Based on the way this person was let go, what are the odds that this company is even going to give them close to fair severance? I would not take that bet.
Well, if usually there's a 90% chance you haven't received proper severance, I think that odds here are even higher, the odds. Probably 95% chance that this person is owed a lot more than what he's been offered, if in fact he was offered anything.
As we mentioned off the top, social media in the workplace, we'll tackle that topic after a short break. In the meantime, here's the number to reach out anytime, 1-855-821-5900, help@employmentlawyer.ca, and always use pocketemploymentlawyer.ca, access to that severance calculator, which we'll talk about again a little later on. And we'll continue with more Employment Law Show. Stick around. People think contractors aren't owed severance. EmploymentLawyer.ca says that is a myth. Many contractors are actually employees and are entitled to full severance pay. Always check with the employment lawyer first at EmploymentLawyer.ca. How do you force insurance companies to pay long-term disability claims?
Insurance companies deny legitimate claims all the time. They're playing the odds. They know that most people are just going to walk away.
Your insurer may ignore you, they may even ignore your doctors, but they can't ignore us.
We know how insurance companies work. We know their weaknesses. We know how to use the legal process to force them to pay you what you're owed.
Go to disabilityrights.ca. Discover your rights, fight back, and get what you're owed. People think you are only owed 2 weeks' pay when you lose your job. EmploymentLawyer.ca says that is a myth. You may be owed much more than 2 weeks per year. Don't settle for less. Always check with the employment lawyer first at EmploymentLawyer.ca. Welcome back. Employment Law Show. Good to have you with us. Reach out before, after, anytime to Lior and his amazing team across the country, right? 1-855-821-5900, help@employmentlawyer.ca. Topic for the day, social media in the workplace. How do you navigate it? Super important topic. Most people probably at one time or another during the day are going to possibly be in a workplace email, maybe doing some surfing online through the company internet, so you got to know what you can and can't do, right? Number one, do employees have the right to privacy, Lior, regarding what they post online?
Well, first thing, before I even talk about privacy, one of the things you want to be mindful of, social media, when you're using it at work, don't spend too much time on it. If your employer finds out you're, on your Facebook or on your other social media accounts when you should be working, they may have some significant concerns. It could amount to time theft if you're not working and you're on social media. I know that sometimes it's difficult. You want to post some things or you want to respond to your friends and family. I get that completely, but I would probably limit most of that to off-hours work. But, we're talking about your rights, and let's talk privacy. You asked me, do you have a right to privacy about what you post online? And the reality is, no, you really don't. So even if you have your privacy settings up and running, you can't really expect any privacy when it comes to social media. You can always or should always assume that whatever you post online can be seen by others. Now, privacy rights only apply in a situation where you have a legitimate expectation of privacy, when you shouldn't expect anyone to know what you're doing or know what you're saying. And then in that situation, if your privacy rights are breached, the law comes in and says, well, no, not so fast. That's wrong. There's recourse. But that doesn't apply generally with social media. You have to assume that whatever you post online, social media, message boards, other places online, regardless of who you believe is seeing it, regardless of your privacy settings, you have to assume that that's fair game, that others can see it, and if they do, that they're not doing anything illegal. I'm not talking about, of course, anyone hacking your account, but there's certainly ways for others to see it. Not to mention, by the way, if you're posting something on a work computer, on your Facebook account, on your work computer, you should assume that your employer has the technological ability to see whatever you're doing on that work computer. So my best advice here is this. If you don't want someone to see what you're putting on, don't put it on social media. Just don't, because you don't really have the right or the expectation to privacy in that situation.
Well, like you said, you don't know who's seeing it, and once it's out there in the ether, it's out there for good, right?
You can't take it back.
Yep.
You may have deleted it, but it takes just one person seeing it, spreading the word, or taking a screenshot. We've all seen situations, with celebrities that maybe they've posted things online that they've regretted and they deleted it, but it's still out there. Well, it doesn't have to only apply to celebrities. It can apply to you, and it could impact your job if your boss may see something that you wrote that you didn't want them to see, even if you've just deleted it very quickly.
Social media in the workplace, that's what we are tackling on this show. Number 2 is this: can an employee be punished over their social media activity for speaking ill of their employer? How about that?
Yes, the answer is absolutely that is possible, because even on social media, you're expected to represent the best interest of your employer. And if you're posting out to the world bad things about your employer, if you're posting things that your employer is not going to find favorable, there could be consequences. By the same token, if you're in a more public role, so let's talk about someone that, say that, I don't know, is a TV host, and they're known with the brand of their employer. They're recognized with that brand. If that person were to say something on social media that maybe has nothing to do with their employer, but that's going to cause problems and embarrassment to their employer, then that employer could have significant concerns, and yes, they could punish that employee. So bottom line is this: if you don't want something to impact your employer, if you don't want your job to be in jeopardy, be very careful with what you post. An employer does have the right to expect that you're going to portray their best interests. And if you go on social media and you say, this company I work for is terrible, the boss is a liar, they underpay their people, if the employer finds out about that, yes, there absolutely could be legal consequences, John.
Well, you got to figure you wouldn't wear a T-shirt bashing your employer at an on-site event or something. And arguably, this is a much larger audience than what you're going to see in person. So of course you wouldn't do that.
That is a very good example. If you went out in public with a T-shirt that says, my employer is terrible, yeah, your employer's going to have a problem with that. That shouldn't be any different, and you're right. It could even be much worse than that, because you're spreading it out to the world as opposed to just down your street. So don't do that if you don't want your employer to be affected by it.
Again, social media in the workplace is what we're talking about. Third point is this: can an employer fire someone for cause as a result of their social media use?
So I said that you can be potentially punished for posting things that are unfavorable to the employer, that embarrass your employer, that badmouth your employer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can be fired for cause. Remember, to be fired for cause, you would have had to do something terrible, something that's so bad that's going to be very difficult, impossible even, to continue employing you. And you doing something wrong, such as saying bad things about your employer on social media, may not be enough to rise to that level, depending on who your employer is, depending on what you've said about your employer, depending on how public a profile you may have, how many viewers you may have on social media. All those things are going to be considered to determine if, in fact, there's just cause to let you go. And the one thing I want you to remember about just cause is that it's all or nothing. There's no such thing as, 80% cause. No. Either there's 100% cause, which means you don't get severance, or there's 0% cause. There's no in between here. So I've seen many employers over the years letting someone go supposedly for cause because of what they've posted on social media, when in fact what the employee did was not bad enough. And I have a perfect example. A couple of years ago, I represented an individual. The story actually made it to the media, where he, instead of a Christmas bonus that he expected, now I know you're going to come up with a Clark Griswold reference.
Oh, yeah.
But we're not talking about Clark here. He and his colleagues got, I think it was a bottle of barbecue sauce as their Christmas gift. So this person went online and posted a bit of a sarcastic comment about how they only got barbecue sauce for Christmas as a Christmas gift or Christmas bonus, and how that wasn't really cool. He may have used some other language, but that was the essence of it. Company finds out about it, lets the person go for cause. not cause. I'm sorry, not even close to being cause in that situation. Because yes, what the employee did may be something he shouldn't have done, but doesn't rise to the level of cause. It wasn't that bad. So the fact that you may have done something wrong, as this person did, does not mean it's cause. It's cause. To be cause, it has to be much worse than that, John.
Barbecue sauce, huh?
Barbecue sauce, you gotta love it.
It's a gift that keeps giving the whole year through, Lior. Phone call, our radio show. Again, employmentlawyer.ca to find a station in your location. You can listen to our show weekly. Call in, ask some questions. We'll get to our second call for the show right now.
My wife, her maternity leave was over, and she got a call from the employer a week before. She was told to come back, and she said okay. She got a call again, to don't come back for now for another 3 weeks because I don't know what to do with the person who is replacing you. And then the last call she got, the employer was saying, I think that the person I hired here, she needs the job more than you do.
I don't mean to laugh, but that's terrible.
Yeah, well, I don't even know what to say to that. It's
terrible.
You don't need to be an employment law expert, an employment law lawyer to know that that's wrong. Okay, and I'm not going to make fun of the situation because it's very serious for the person that's now losing their job. When they obviously need it. So I take that very seriously. But we talked about this on a previous show and on other shows, that you can't do that. An employer can't do that. There's no discretion here. The employer doesn't get to decide if they are going to bring the person back. They don't get to decide who needs the job more. There's no discretion. The law makes the decision for the employer. And the law says if you have an employee that's on a parental leave, you bring them back. Yep. Not if you want to, not if you think it's the best idea, you just do it. And an employer that doesn't do that is going to have consequences under employment standards, under human rights legislation, wrongful dismissal, you name it. It's wrong, it's not legal. Now, if the job just ceases to exist, there's no more job no matter what, and the person would have lost their job even if they hadn't taken a parental leave, okay, in that very, very narrow set of circumstances, the employer can let the employee go with their full severance, of course. But to say that we're going to keep your replacement or to say anything remotely close to we just don't want to bring you back, illegal, should never, ever, ever happen.
It was a great call. Want to get to one more before the end of the show. We'll do that, but we got to take a short break first, right? So in the meantime, write down the number and the contact information, 1-855-821-5900 and help@employmentlawyer.ca. We'll be right back.
People think you have to sign back a severance offer by a deadline. EmploymentLawyer.ca says that is a myth. Deadlines are used as a pressure tactic. Make sure the offer is fair before you sign. Always check with the employment lawyer first at EmploymentLawyer.ca. Can insurance companies deny long-term disability claims for mental illness?
When you're suffering from a mental health disability, insurance companies just don't understand. But we do.
They can absolutely not force you back to work. If your doctors say you are not ready and you know you're not ready, they cannot make you go back to work.
If you have a mental health disability and your claim is denied, don't give up. Give us a call and let us fight for you.
Go to disabilityrights.ca. Discover your rights, fight back, and get what you're owed. People think you aren't owed severance pay if you are fired for a reason. EmploymentLawyer.ca says that is a myth. Most for-cause terminations are false, and you are still owed full severance. Always check with the employment lawyer first at EmploymentLawyer.ca.
All right, welcome back. Employment Law Show. You heard that, employmentlawyer.ca. That is the website you want to go to find a radio station across this wonderful country. You can catch our weekly broadcast. Leo and I have been doing these shows for almost 10 years, so there's all kinds of information to be learned. You can also call into most of the shows live on air, ask some questions, and you might even make it onto this show as well. So phone call number 3 for the day, Leo, is coming up right now.
I work for a family company. Basically, I've been more or less threatened to have my pay structure altered to a commission base where I'm currently on a base salary. Is that legal?
How long have you been there?
About 22 years.
Wow, okay. And how old are you?
49.
Well, John, you've heard me say many times that an employer cannot make significant changes to terms of employment. Well, let's be clear here. Changing your compensation structure from salary to commission, or frankly, from commission to salary, is a significant change. Always will be. No matter how the employer structures it, no matter what other caveats the employer puts in, going from one pay commission to salary or vice versa, not something an employer can do. And if the employer does that, definitely constructive dismissal. So in a situation like that, he has a couple of choices. Number one is he can accept this and continue working if that's what he wants. Now he's going to be earning commissions. If he's comfortable with that, sure, have at it. But the other option is he can say, no, thank you. And if you're going to do that, employer, I'm going to treat that as a constructive dismissal. It's as if you've let me go. Now you have to pay me my full severance. So very important to remember that if your pay structure changes that way. Now, how much severance he's owed, we're going to go back, of course, to our pocketemploymentlawyer.ca tool. You look at our severance calculator that's available on that page, and let's actually see the real amount that this person is owed when he's been constructively dismissed, when his pay structure is changing. So he's in a sales role, been there for 22 years, 49 years of age. You can see that he's easily going to be owed about 18 months of pay. Now, that's even though his company's not letting him go. They're just changing his pay structure. But because it's a constructive dismissal, he's going to be owed that 18-month severance, John.
The website terminationquestions.com is built for you to do exactly that. Ask questions about your work life and termination. Go on there anytime. And Lior, a member of his team, always like to answer those quite readily and quite quickly, as a matter of fact. Terminationquestions.com. We'll get to one in our remaining minutes here. Lior says, I'm a salesperson in a small retail store and have been sick and unable to work for almost 2 weeks. My employer has implied that despite the fact that I have a doctor's note, I'm in danger of losing my job due to absenteeism. Can I be fired for this?
No. No, no, no. You cannot be let go because you're sick, because you need time off work when you have that doctor's note. Now listen, if you decide you can't come into work and you don't have a doctor's note, yes, you are in danger. Get that doctor's note. But if you have that doctor's note, you cannot be let go. And tell your employer, no, I'm not accepting that. I have a doctor's note. I'm going to come back as soon as I'm cleared. And if they do anything to you, let me know. I can get them off your back. And if they still decide to go ahead with the termination, yeah, you better believe that there's going to be legal consequences. So when you're sick, focus on getting healthy. Focus on getting better. Focus on doing what your doctor says. You shouldn't have to worry about your job status and losing your job. And if your employer is going to make that life difficult, you have to get on the phone and call me.
Get to one more quickly here, and it goes like this. I'm about to leave my current job to take an identical position with a different company. This is a very difficult decision for me, as I've been with the current employer for almost 10 years. Is there anything I should be aware of before I accept this offer?
Well, you know, I wish we had even more time for this. Yeah. I'm going to kind of run through a few things you have to look out for. So it's not just the salary or vacation. There's a few things you really have to be careful about here. Number one, future severance. Is there a term in this job offer that impacts your future severance? You don't want to find out when you're let go a year from now, 2 years, 20 years from now, that by signing this job offer letter, you gave up tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars. You don't want anything in that employment agreement that limits or reduces your severance, number one. Number two is temporary layoff. You do not want to agree to anything in your employment agreement that gives the company the right to put you on a temporary layoff. An employer doesn't have a right to do that unless you give them that right by signing an employment agreement that says so. What about something that gives the company the right to change your job, your hours, your compensation, your responsibilities? Don't do that. That would be saying, you can hire me at whatever position you want, pay me whatever you want, and I'm cool with it. You're not cool with it, so don't agree to that. Also, non-competition, non-solicitation, just a few things you want to pay attention for or to. And ultimately, if your employer won't agree, you may want to consider whether you want to leave that secure job. Happy to help you negotiate, happy to help you understand what you're signing so that you don't make those mistakes.
Generally, I mean, especially if they've been asked to come to this new employer, they have a little bit of leeway for negotiating skills. Some of these things you can get written out of there that are not beneficial to you.
Absolutely, John. I help individuals negotiate these things all the time. Don't assume you can negotiate. Oftentimes, it's actually very easy to negotiate, especially these days. Your employer may really want you to join, so you have some leverage. You have the ability to negotiate, especially if what you're asking for is not crazy. You're not asking them to triple your salary. Oftentimes, you can easily negotiate those things.
And with that, we are done for another show. Thank you so much for your contributions, either on the radio show, through terminationquestions.com, and email as well. You can do all those things moving forward, and the phone number as well, 1-855-821-5900, help@employmentlawyer.ca, terminationquestions.com, and always first, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca. You'll have access to the severance calculator as well. We'll catch you next time on the Employment Law Show.